Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the impossible circumstances surrounding the climax of a totally baffling mystery, before we rewind a bit to see exactly how a man with zero credentials somehow built a global criminal empire. Let's get right to it.
Section 1. The Impossible Suicide.
We're actually going to kick this off at the very end, inside the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Manhattan. Now, this is known as the most secure federal detention facility in the country. But on August 10th, 2019, the man who held secrets that could literally bring down presidents, princes, and billionaires was found dead in his cell. Normally, standard security protocols for a high-profile inmate are incredibly tight. But when you lay out the sheer volume of quote-unquote coincidences that happened that night, it's wild. His suicide watch had mysteriously been lifted 6 days prior. His cellmate conveniently transferred out the night before. The 2 guards assigned to check on him every 30 minutes totally failed to do so for 3 hours, later admitting they fell asleep and just falsified the logs. Oh, and to top the whole shebang off, the security cameras outside his cell completely malfunctioned. It's really no wonder this sparked global outreach, especially considering a forensic pathologist hired by the family later found neck fractures that are actually much more common to strangulation than hanging.
Section 2. Building the Billionaire Network.
So to truly understand how this guy ended up in that heavily guarded cell, we have to rewind and look at his incredibly unlikely ascent into high society, because honestly, none of it makes sense on paper. Born in Brooklyn in 1953 to a Parks Department groundskeeper and a homemaker, Jeffrey Epstein was basically just a kid who was good at math. He dropped out of college, he had absolutely no credentials, and yet in 1974, he somehow talks his way into a teaching position at the ultra-exclusive Dalton School in Manhattan. Now, he wasn't there because he just loved teaching calculus. Actually, scratch that, his real focus was studying the parents, the Wall Street titans and the old money dynasties. He parlayed those relationships into a job at Bear Stearns in 1976, literally lying about his degrees on his resume. He charmed his way all the way up to partner before a regulatory investigation forced him out in 1981. For most people, that's career over, right? But he bounces back and eventually launches his own firm, J. Epstein & Company, in 1988 down in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Now, here is the single most staggering rule for his new financial firm. He only accepted clients worth $1 billion or more. I mean, think about that for a second. A guy with a fraudulent resume and a major regulatory scandal sets an entry fee of $1 billion. It's almost unbelievable.
And despite having no auditable returns, no regulatory filings, and no massive list of grateful billionaire clients pointing to his brilliant stock picks, he amasses these incredible, mind-boggling assets. He somehow gains power of attorney over Victoria's Secret billionaire Les Wexner's entire fortune. He's flying around in a private Boeing 727, he buys Little St. James, a private island in the Caribbean, and owns this massive Manhattan townhouse. It all raises one obvious, glaring question. Where did all this money actually come from?
Section 3. A business of blackmail. Well, the dark reality of his business model was that he wasn't managing money at all. He was managing people. He orchestrated this horrific pyramid scheme built entirely on exploiting children. Teenage girls were brought to his mansions under the guise of giving massages for a few $100s, and then they were incentivized with cash to recruit their friends. It was quite literally a factory of abuse. But here's the thing that most people miss about this whole operation. The abuse itself was actually the tool. It wasn't the endgame. The abuse was the foundation of a highly industrialized, cold-blooded blackmail infrastructure. The playbook was simple. Step 1, create a compromising situation with his highly powerful guests. Step 2, record it. Multiple victims testified that his homes were completely wired with hidden cameras. And Step 3, own the target forever. This is a classic textbook technique long used by intelligence agencies like the CIA and the KGB. Epstein just took it and industrialized it for the global elite. And when you start looking at the people running and funding the operation, it heavily suggests a network deeply tied to powerful intelligence and international business figures. His closest partner and recruiter was Ghislaine Maxwell. Now, her father, Robert Maxwell, was an alleged Mossad agent who received a state funeral in Israel that was actually attended by 6 intelligence chiefs. Then you have Les Wexner, his biggest patron and co-founder of the secretive mega group, and Ehud Barak, the former Israeli prime minister who was photographed visiting Epstein's Manhattan residence dozens of times. We aren't just talking about random socialites here. These are highly connected, immensely powerful individuals. Section 4. The Sweetheart Deal. Eventually, this well-oiled machine hit a massive roadblock. In March 2005, local police in Palm Beach, Florida, received a phone call from a concerned mother. That one single thread unraveled quickly, and police identified 36 underage victims, bringing this entire shadow operation to the absolute brink of exposure. But what followed was just a catastrophic failure of the justice system. On one hand, the FBI built what absolutely should have been an airtight case, a 53-page draft indictment, dozens of witnesses, just mountains of evidence. But on the flip side, Epstein hired legal titans Alan Dershowitz and Ken Starr. And they weren't there to fight the evidence. They were there to make the trial disappear. The result was a breathtakingly lenient deal from federal prosecutor Alexander Acosta. Epstein pleaded to just 2 state charges, served 13 months in a county jail with daily work release, and, most outrageously of all, secured blanket immunity for all unnamed co-conspirators. Years later, things got even more chilling. When Alexander Acosta was being vetted by the Trump transition team for a cabinet position, he allegedly gave this incredible excuse for the sweetheart deal. He reportedly said, "They told me Epstein belonged to intelligence, and I should back off. So I did." Now, it's really important to note that Acosta later denied this under oath, and the quote has never been formally corroborated, but regardless of his reasoning, the outcome was completely undeniable. A known predator was left entirely free to operate for another decade. Section 5. The Final Arrest. That decade of freedom finally crumbled, and not because of law enforcement, but because one single reporter decided to pull the thread that nobody else in power wanted to touch. The dominoes fell fast after that. In November 2018, Miami Herald reporter Julie K. Brown published a massive series exposing the plea deal to the world. The public outrage was absolutely deafening, eventually forcing Acosta's resignation. By July 2019, federal agents finally arrested the supposedly untouchable man at Teterboro Airport, and this time there was no sweetheart deal. He was denied bail, sent straight to the MCC, and then, just 6 weeks later in August 2019, he was found dead. But the story doesn't end in that jail cell. When federal agents raided his Manhattan townhouse, they found the very leverage he held over the elite. We're talking safes full of diamonds, CDs meticulously labeled with names, and his massive, infamous contact book. But here's the terrifying part. Whatever hard recordings actually existed either vanished into the wrong hands before the authorities ever got there, or those secrets simply died with him. Section 6. The Untouchables. So what are we actually supposed to take away from all of this today? Well, here is the lingering reality we have to face as a society. Jeffrey Epstein is dead. His primary operational engine, Ghislaine Maxwell, was convicted in December 2021 and sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. But during her entire trial, she named absolutely no one, which means the billionaires, the politicians, the scientists, and the global elites who flew on his planes, who visited his private island, and who knew exactly what was happening, they remain completely untouched. They are still rich, still powerful, and they're still free. It really leaves us with this haunting final thought from our source material. In this life, good people are often treated as though they were wicked, and wicked people are often treated as though they were good. This whole timeline forces us to question just how far the shield of unimaginable wealth and power truly extends. And if this massive infrastructure of blackmail outlived its architect, who is still operating in the dark?